The ranch sat far from the main road, where the wind moved slower and nights felt heavier. Most people passed it without a second look. It was just land, wood fences, and old barns that had seen better days, and in the middle of it all lived a brown horse with calm eyes and a strange name, Oracle. No one knew why he was named that. He wasn't faster than the others, he wasn't stronger. He didn't behave like anything special. Most days, he stood quietly, watching the horizon as if waiting for something that never came. The first strange thing happened late at night. The ranch was silent except for insects and the soft sound of hay shifting in the stalls. One of the workers heard a scraping sound coming from Oracle's stable. At first, it sounded normal. Horses often paw the ground when they're restless, but this was different. The sound didn't stop, it moved slowly, carefully, almost like someone drawing lines on purpose. When the worker checked the stall, Oracle was standing over the dirt floor, his hoof moving in smooth, controlled motions. On the ground were shapes, not random marks, long lines, circles, sharp angles that didn't belong to chance. It looked less like a mess and more like a picture. The worker laughed it off. Just a bored horse, he said, smoothing the dirt with his boot. Oracle lifted his head and stared at him. His eyes were wide, alert, almost urgent. But the moment passed and the lights were turned off. The next day went on like any other. Horses were fed, gates were checked. The sun rose and fell without warning anyone of what was coming. Then, just before midnight, flames broke out in the old storage barn. The fire spread fast. Dry wood, old hay, and strong wind turned a small spark into chaos. By the time it was put out, half the barn was gone. Everyone was shaken. No one was hurt, but the damage was real. It wasn't until morning that someone remembered Oracle's drawings. The worker went back to the stable and looked at the dirt again. This time, he didn't smooth it away. He stared. The long lines matched the shape of the barn. The dark circle sat exactly where the fire had started. His stomach tightened. It felt wrong to think it. So he didn't say anything. Coincidences happen, he told himself. Horses don't predict fires. That night, Oracle drew again. New shapes, different lines. And this time, more than one person saw it. They joked about it, took pictures and shared nervous smiles. Still, no one truly believed. They couldn't, because believing would mean accepting something impossible, and deep down, they all felt it. The future was trying to speak, and it had chosen the one voice no one would ever trust. The second time it happened, no one could pretend it was nothing. Oracle had never scratched the ground during the day before, but that afternoon he refused to eat and kept circling the edge of his stall. His breathing was heavy, and his ears stayed pulled back as if he were listening to something far away. When he finally lowered his hoof, the sound was sharp and steady. People stopped what they were doing and watched. The dirt floor slowly filled with fresh lines, deeper than before, pressed with force and purpose. This drawing was not like the first. It looked wider, stretched out, with broken curves cutting through the middle. One of the older ranch hands felt uneasy and stepped back. Another laughed nervously and said it looked like a child's messy game. Someone even joked that Oracle should be put on social media, but the jokes felt thin. No one erased the drawing this time. They left it there, as if afraid of what might happen if they touched it. The next day, dark clouds gathered early. The air felt thick and heavy, pressing down on the land. By afternoon, rain came hard and fast. Water rushed through the fields, filling low ground in minutes. A nearby creek swelled beyond its banks and broke through the road. By nightfall, parts of the area were flooded. Power lines went down, trucks were stranded, people were forced to climb to higher ground and wait for help. When the rain finally slowed, someone went back to the stable. The drawing was still there, untouched, and suddenly it made sense. The long stretched lines were the road, the broken curves were the water cutting through it. The place where Oracle had dug the deepest matched the spot where the road had collapsed. Silence filled the barn. No one laughed this time. From that moment on, Oracle was no longer just another horse. People began watching him closely. Every movement mattered. Every restless step caused whispers. Some wanted to believe it was a gift. Others said it was dangerous to think that way. A few even felt afraid to be near him. They wondered what it meant if an animal could see what humans could not. The drawings continued. Always at night, always clear, and always followed by something bad within a single day. A broken bridge, a gas leak, a power failure that shut down half the town. The patterns were impossible to ignore. Dates were written down, photos were saved, times were marked. The proof grew heavier with every passing week, yet telling others brought nothing but doubt. Officials brushed it off, neighbors shook their heads. The idea sounded foolish the moment it was spoken aloud. A horse that could see the future did not fit into the world people trusted. So the warning stayed on the ranch, trapped in dirt floors and worried eyes. Oracle seemed to feel the weight of it all. His calm nature faded. He slept less, he paced more. His eyes no longer rested on the horizon but on the ground, as if the future itself was pressing up from below. And with every new drawing, one thought became harder to escape: if he could see disasters coming, then sooner or later he would draw something no one could stop. The days grew tense on the ranch. Oracle had become more than a horse, he was a warning system that no one could fully understand or control. Every morning, the workers checked the stalls first, before feeding the other animals or even opening the gates. The dirt floor had become a map of danger, and each mark etched by Oracle's hoof carried weight no one wanted to admit. Lines and curves began to repeat in ways that suggested patterns, like a language waiting to be read, though no one had the skill to translate it. One worker even began keeping a small notebook, drawing copies of the shapes and jotting down the time, hoping that if he could chart them, he might start to understand. Despite the growing evidence, life outside the ranch went on as usual. Trucks passed the gates, children rode horses down the trails, and the town nearby remained oblivious. Every time someone tried to warn a neighbor or call authorities, they were met with laughter or disbelief. A psychic horse, it sounded absurd, and most people refused to take it seriously. That only added to the frustration. The people on the ranch were trapped between two realities. They saw the proof, yet no one else would believe them. Oracle, sensing their tension, seemed restless more than ever. He would pace back and forth, paw at corners of the stall, sometimes freezing mid-step as if listening to a voice only he could hear. One morning, a new drawing appeared. It was larger than any before, covering almost the entire stall floor. The lines were jagged and frantic, looping around themselves in a way that made the workers' stomach twist. The shapes no longer resembled barns or roads or rivers. They were abstract, chaotic, and hard to interpret, yet the sense of urgency was undeniable. Oracle pressed down harder with his hooves, leaving deep marks that no one could ignore. It was as if the horse was shouting a warning through the dirt, though the message remained hidden. The worker's hands shook as he sketched the pattern in his notebook. Every line seemed to hum with a silent threat, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the disaster would affect more than just the ranch. By evening, the mood on the ranch had shifted completely. The other animals were restless too. Dogs barked at nothing, cows huddled in corners, and even the horses in nearby stalls seemed to sense tension in the air. The humans tried to prepare, stacking sandbags, checking gates, and making sure the tractors and equipment were ready. It wasn't clear what they were preparing for, only that Oracle's drawing demanded action. Yet, despite all the caution, a sense of dread hung over everyone like a cloud. They could feel it in their bones, even if they could not name it. As night fell, Oracle continued to paw at the floor, occasionally stopping to stare at a corner of the barn. The worker who had begun documenting everything stayed close, notebook in hand, tracing the marks one more time before sleep. He noticed something that made his pulse quicken: a small series of repeated lines that resembled the shape of the town beyond the ranch. Could Oracle be predicting something far larger than another barn fire or flooded field? The thought made him swallow hard. Every line, every circle, every scratch of the hoof had a precision that could not be explained. It was as if the horse had seen a map of events before they happened, and now, this final drawing suggested the disaster would touch everyone. No one slept that night. The usual sounds of crickets and distant owls felt muted. Overshadowed by tension, the workers took turns checking the barn, shining flashlights over the drawing, trying to make sense of it. Oracle, sensing the humans' anxiety, remained unusually calm at times, only to erupt into frantic pawing again when he sensed the passage of time. Every minute stretched like hours, and for the first time, they all realized that believing Oracle wasn't enough. Watching him wasn't enough. If the pattern of disasters continued, someone would have to act hand fast. By midnight, the storm clouds gathered over the horizon. The wind picked up and rattled the barn doors. The humans glanced nervously outside, but the town beyond still slept peacefully, unaware that a warning had been drawn in dirt and ignored. The notebook with Oracle's copied patterns sat open on the table, the lines looking eerily like the events they had already witnessed, only bigger, more dangerous. It was a silent countdown, and the humans were caught in the terrifying space between knowing and doing. Oracle's eyes glimmered in the dark, almost like he was pleading for someone to understand, for someone to finally see the future he was trying to show them. The tension was unbearable, and all anyone could do was wait, hearts pounding, for the next event that would prove Oracle's visions were real. The tension on the ranch had reached a level no one had ever experienced before. Oracle's new drawings were unlike anything seen before. Twisted, sprawling, almost desperate in their design. The shapes no longer hinted at small fires or floods. They suggested a calamity that could touch the whole town beyond the ranch. The humans who had once laughed at the idea of a prophetic horse now felt a weight pressing on their chests every time they entered the barn. They tried to decode the markings, tracing each line with their fingers, but the deeper they looked, the less sense it made. It was a warning, yes, but what kind of disaster exactly? That question lingered, heavy and unanswerable. Oracle circled the stall with precise, anxious steps, pawing at the dirt as if he were running out of time, as if the very ground beneath him was slipping away. The workers began to prepare for the unknown. They reinforced gates, moved equipment to higher ground, and kept emergency supplies ready, even though they had no clear idea what they were preparing for. Every sound in the barn seemed magnified: the wind rattling the roof, the creak of the wooden beams, the low hum of distant machinery. The night felt alive with tension. Oracle's eyes glimmered in the dim light, reflecting a strange intelligence, a knowing that unsettled everyone watching. Each hoof step he took seemed to echo a warning through the barn, as though he were pacing out the hours until the disaster struck. The humans whispered to each other, their voices low, uncertain, but even in conversation, their words felt inadequate. They could sense the storm of events coming, but the specifics remained locked in the horses' frantic marks on the dirt. By late evening, one of the ranch hands noticed something terrifying. The newest drawing had a section that resembled a cluster of buildings, the town itself. There were jagged lines that could indicate roads splitting apart or structures collapsing. It was unmistakable. Oracle was predicting that the disaster would not be contained to the ranch. For the first time, the humans truly understood the scale of what they were facing. Panic stirred beneath the surface. What could they do? How could they warn anyone without sounding insane? Authorities would dismiss them, neighbors would laugh. Yet the clock was moving forward, and every moment of hesitation brought the town closer to danger. The air shifted suddenly. The wind outside grew stronger, shaking the barn doors and sending dust motes dancing in the flashlight beams. Oracle froze, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. His hoof hovered above the ground as if feeling vibrations that humans could not detect. The humans watched, breathless, sensing that the moment they had feared was approaching. The markings on the dirt seemed to pulse in the dim light, chaotic but precise, each line a silent scream, each curve a countdown. The storm that had gathered on the horizon now rumbled with life. But it was more than weather, it was the sound of the future pressing against the present. One of the humans, the one who had kept the notebook, stepped closer to Oracle. He felt the urgency radiating from the horse, and with a mixture of fear and determination, he decided to take action. He grabbed his phone and tried to call the local authorities, explaining everything as quickly as he could. The words tumbled out, halting and breathless. A horse is drawing disasters. He's predicting something. It's going to hit the town in less than 24 hours. There was silence at the other end, then polite laughter, then the line went dead. The call had failed. The notebook lay open at the edge of the stall, the copied marks glaring back, as though daring them to do more. The humans were left with no choice but to act on their own. They raced to check on neighbors, pounding on doors and warning everyone they could reach. Some looked at them with disbelief, others with concern, but few took the warnings seriously. Panic was beginning to rise, but it was fragmented, incomplete, an echo of the chaos Oracle had drawn. Meanwhile, the horse continued to pace, marking more lines in the dirt, the patterns growing wilder, more frenzied, reflecting the increasing danger. Each scratch was a heartbeat, each hoofstep a warning that the window of time was closing. As midnight approached, the tension was unbearable. The humans could feel the impending disaster in their bones, a pressure that made their chests tighten and their heads ache. Oracle stopped suddenly, planting his hooves firmly, and lowered his head to the ground. The last lines of the drawing were made with forceful, desperate sweeps, almost as if the horse were trying to finish a message before time ran out. The humans stared at it, understanding that this was the climax, the final warning before the inevitable. Outside, the wind screamed louder and distant lights flickered. The night had grown alive with anticipation, and the future that Oracle had seen was about to arrive, whether anyone was ready or not.